Good evening and welcome to the Arcadia Performing Arts Center. I invite you to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We are fortunate in Arcadia Unified to have very hard-working and talented students, and we have been just favored with the beautiful music from our string quartet. Please join me in another round of applause for them and all our student performers. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Welcome to the Arcadia Unified State of the District. Sounds so formal. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us here and also thank those who are watching online. We spend a lot of time in Arcadia talking about the why. Why do we do what we do? We are a purpose-driven organization, and there is no greater purpose than serving our students. Dr. Vanasdall is going to be highlighting our values and our purpose a little later this evening, but I really wanted to take a moment and point out that tonight's State of the District is a great example of our values in action, especially the value of collaboration, as evidenced just by how many people will present this evening. It's going to give you a window into the teamwork and the true better together approach that we take in the stewardship of our schools. And stewardship begins with the Board of Education. And so I'd like to introduce us. I am Lee Chavez, and I am serving as the president this year. But more importantly, I am the proud parent of 2 Arcadia Unified graduates. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Fenton Eng, our vice president this year, who unfortunately could not be with us tonight. Funnily enough, he is also the parent of 2 Arcadia Unified graduates. To my right is Mrs. Shirley Yee, the clerk of our board. And you'll never guess, she's the parent of 2 students who are currently at Arcadia High School. Next, we have Raymond Cheung on the other side, who, you won't hold your breath, is the parent of 2 Arcadia students, one at the elementary and one at the middle school levels. And Raymond also has the distinction of being an alumni of Arcadia himself. And last but not least is Mrs. Kay Kinsler. Guess what? Also the parent of 2 Arcadia Unified graduates. There's kind of a theme there. And I think that theme is what makes our board special. Having a Board of Education made up of parents, past parents, and people who have dedicated years of service to making Arcadia better. And I think that you will see the care and that dedication evidenced in the stewardship and what you will see tonight. Now, if we could go ahead and change the slide, please. The board stewards the district and helps set goals, but you'll notice we have our board goals above. And they also have the LCAP, education famous for using initials. What is the LCAP? The Local Control and Accountability Plan. And the reason that that is with board goals is that these goals are also the goals in our Local Control Accountability Plan. That plan is the plan that we make where we set goals, we plan actions, and we align and leverage our resources in the support of those goals, so that we can improve our outcomes for all students. How do we arrive at that plan? Every school site, everyone in the district involves parents, community members, educators, and staff members. It is a collaboration, back to that value that we think so highly of and really try to live. That plan is the collaboration from the input of all of those partners, where we really critically take a look at what were our goals before? Where were we? Where would we like to go? It's a roadmap of sorts, and every roadmap needs direction, and that direction is the goals. So I'm going to briefly touch on these 6 goals. The first is to have high-performing expert learners. Arcadia does a great job of delivering world-class education, and our students are a big part of that. They are engaged and very involved in learning about their own education and their best learning styles. And it falls right into goal number 2, to have engaged, connected, and empowered students that are in a safe and healthy school climate. This is the goal that really addresses more than academics. This is talking about supporting the needs of the whole child. This is the piece where we really instill wellness into our programming and how important that is that our students feel connected, safe, and healthy. 3, multi-tiered systems of support, there we go with initials again, MTSS, through world-class instruction and support. MTSS is a system where we are intentionally looking at the different ways we can support students at different levels. What can we do with all students in the classroom to support their success? What can we do for a student that maybe needs a little more? And we are working to align our language around that across the district. What's wonderful about this is it's not just about academics. It also is about behavioral support and supporting the whole child. Goal 4, have highly effective staff committed to all, capitalized, all students. We are so fortunate in Arcadia to have the most amazing staff, the most committed and caring people who really put students first. And all students is important. Arcadia is not focused on a subset of students or one type of student. This goal means reaching every student, wherever that student is, and helping them to be successful. Goal number 5 is really important, fiscal integrity. Arcadia does a good job of conservative budgeting and saving money for a rainy day. School finance is a really complex and difficult situation. We are required to have our budget in place and know what's going to happen for the next 3 years before the state of California even lets you know what their budget is and how much funding you're going to get. So I am very proud of both our board and our district's commitment to making sure that we have a sound fiscal base upon which to do all these other goals. Number 6 sounds a little weird. Meet state and county requirements. Not very lofty, mainly because that's a goal that was given to all school districts from on high. But I want to say that while it seems kind of pedestrian, lots and lots of staff time and energy are poured into making sure that we do meet state and county requirements. There's an inordinate amount of reporting and paperwork that needs to be done in order to ensure that we get the funding and support that we need from both the state and federal level. And so that goal means that we are doing what we need to do the work that we truly care about. So those are our goals. They are a joint effort. The board has decided to align those goals with the LCAP goals. We have input into those goals, so that we are all traveling in the same direction. We are all working for the betterment of our students and families together in the same way. And I appreciate your time tonight as we look at those goals in our direction, and I'll be passing it off to my fellow board member, Mr. Cheung, who will talk a little bit about our theme throughout the pandemic and this year.
Thank you, Madam President. So when we had to shut down all of our campuses in March of 2020, we still had to continue the board meetings online. We typically begin our meetings with an inspiration from one of our board members. So at that critical time, it happened to fall upon Mr. Fenton Ng. It was his turn to share something inspiring during a difficult time. Fenton chose to share the word crisis in Chinese. So written Chinese is not alphabetical, it's based on images that represent concepts. The word crisis is comprised of 2 characters. In Cantonese, it is pronounced ngai ge. An extension on the top character means danger, ngai him. An extension of the lower character means opportunity, ge wei. This Chinese wordology suggests that in a crisis, we encounter a fork in the road. We can choose to be fearful of the danger ahead or view the moment as an opportunity to succeed in overcoming the crisis. Our hope then, and it was our choice, that this would be an opportunity to do good.
Good evening, everyone. Madam President, board members, our staff, our students, our parents that are here with us tonight and watching from online. Welcome. It is truly an honor to be able to share our collective work together tonight. When I was trying to imagine a visual that I could share to start off this part of the presentation, if you could go back one, I was trying to find something that would really show the impact that we've all been through over the last year plus one. Back one slide. And after staring at this slide for a while, I realized I didn't need to go any further. And I'm not going to ask any of you to raise your hand at this time, but someone out there is saying right now, wait, he has hair in this picture. What happened to the hair? Well, that's called the pandemic. And I think this is the best visual, personally, that can represent this journey, this challenge that we've been through, and how it has truly changed all of our lives. All right, we can move forward now. Little vulnerability there. So when this pandemic started, and even opening this school year, as we reflect back, we recognize that there's no playbook. Now, administrators are notorious for having shelves of binders. It's like a badge of honor, like how many conferences have I attended, how many trainings have I been through, my doctorate program. I can tell you that nowhere on any of those shelves is there a binder that says pandemic manual or how to manage forest fires in your community during a pandemic on the first day of school. So clearly, everyone was left rudderless. And so the question is, how are you going to anchor your decisions? What is it that's going to be the foundation during the tumultuous times ahead? Thankfully, about 5 years ago, we did a year-long process to emerge our values that we just spoke about. And I use the word emerge because it's an important word. We didn't tell our organization or community, this is what we value or this is what we aspire to. We basically sat and talked with people, with staff, with parents, with students, and listened for what was those important words that draw us together, that add value, that makes Arcadia unique and special. And after that process, we came up with these 5: collaborate, think critically, be creative, offer empathy, and learn from failure. It's truly these 5 values that we have leaned into over the last couple of years and have served us well. They have proven to be that foundation that has kept us firm during all of these challenging times. All of that under the rallying cry of imagine, inquire, and inspire. And I continue to be inspired when I walk through classrooms and I hear students using that rally cry, when I hear teachers talking about imagine, inquire, and inspire. In all of that, our hope culminates with to challenge and inspire students to make a positive and profound impact on their world. That's what we're about. That started years ago, and thankfully, that continued to be true during the pandemic. Let me do a quick district overview. I know most of you already know this, but we have 11 schools in the district, 6 elementary schools that feed into 3 middle schools, and then into 1 comprehensive high school, Arcadia High School, and we have 1 alternative learning program, Rancho Learning Center. We have nearly 9,000 students and nearly 1,100 employees. When I think about accomplishments that you're going to hear tonight, and when you hear people talking about some of the specific programs and things that were implemented over this past year, I want you to listen for 2 specific themes, because I believe everything that you hear tonight is going to fall into one of the 2. And these 2 are important because they were a commitment that we made as a board and as a district to all of you, to our staff, students, and parents at the beginning of the pandemic, and again, re-emphasizing that at the beginning of this past year. And that is, the first one is the health and safety of students and staff. First and foremost, every decision we make will start with, is this going to keep our student, staff, community healthy and safe as we move forward? Once that's clear, and once we have that down, the next emphasis is going to be maximizing teaching and learning. We recognized right up front that our students that are sitting in the classrooms during this pandemic right now don't get a do-over. We're not going to just pause and everyone gets to go back to 9th grade or back to junior year. Their lives continue on, as do ours. And so our commitment to our current students is that we were going to do everything possible to make sure that they continue to be competitive on a world scale, academically, socially, emotionally, athletically, whatever their choice in life is. So as you listen tonight, please try to see all of the work that we're doing within these 2 focus points that we committed to you. When we think of the how, if you'll move forward, that's the content. The how we do that, how we make decisions. And this is at a 40,000-foot level, but it's involved in every decision that we make in the district. I want to jump down to the bottom of this slide where you'll see consistency and stability. We know that students learn best when there's consistency and stability in their life, in the environment around them. We know that it provides psychological safety. The research shows that if people can predict their environment, when they wake up in the morning and they have an idea of what that day is going to look like and their safety, that creates that psychological safety that allows for learning. And then again, when there's stability and consistency, then we can all focus on learning and social emotional health. So if you look at those diagrams, basically these are representative of the different ways organizations chose to manage during the pandemic. The first one, this called misleading roadmap, is very linear, and it assumes that we know where we're starting, where we are today, that's the first dot, and we're going to move through this in a very linear way. We're going to do this next, we're going to do this next, and then we're going to be on the other side on this date, right? It assumes control. We're in control of our destiny. We know what's going to happen. We know what we're going to do. Districts, organizations that chose this route found themselves in what you probably recognize as a continuous loop of that pattern, right? We're going to go back to school in 3 weeks, and we're going to do this, this, and this, and in 3 weeks, all of our students are going to return. 2.5 weeks in, the health department says, no, you're not. You're not going back, and you don't get to make that decision. And you're back to planning again. Okay, it's going to be 3 more weeks out, and you start planning. That does not provide the consistency or the stability we're looking for. When everyone has one foot in the planning constantly and not knowing, am I doing virtual, am I going back to the classroom, that simply does not match who we are as a district. The second one is called an honest roadmap, and basically it says you know where you are today, but as you move out and forward, you don't know all of the variables that exist. You know it's going to be an unlimited amount of variables you don't know, and you're just kind of paralyzed. And that's not healthy either. The last one is the one we decided as an organization that we were going to follow and we're going to stick through during the pandemic. And what it assumes is you know where you are today, and you're going to make steps only when you have all of the information. It doesn't mean you're the second diagram that you're not planning. If you notice those dots, there's some dotted lines there. That means you're leaning on your network, you have staff, you have experts out exploring all the possibilities. What's going to happen if we go back in 2 weeks? Let's decide what are going to be the steps that we're going to take. How are we going to work with our union groups? How are we going to communicate with parents? You're doing all of the work to cover it, but you don't make the steps and disrupt the teaching and learning and the important work that you're doing until you have all of the information. I'm very proud of that strategy that we selected, and you never quite know when you start, is this going to be what serves us best in the end? We are now very confident that it did serve us well, and during all of those months where we thought that we would be back in a week or two, instead of constantly interrupting our teachers with collaborating on a new plan for the following week, they were able to focus on teaching and learning, and our counselors were able to focus on social and emotional wellness. Very proud of that. Next slide, please. So when we think about recognitions, there's so many things that we could list, and we could be here for a week. I really just selected one that includes quantitative and qualitative data, both statistics pulled from the state website and truly surveys, interviews with communities. And that is our top 1% best school district in LA, California, and the United States in the 2022 niche rankings. Within that, we were once again recognized for having the best teachers, best places to teach, safest school districts, and an overall A+ grade. I think that's something worth being proud of. With that, I am going to turn it over to someone that when we talk about maximizing teaching and learning, we are directly speaking about educational services and a host of support staff whose only responsibility is supporting that high level of teaching and learning in the classroom, and that is being led by Dr. Brent Forsee.
Thank you, Dr. Vanasdall. Thank you for being here this evening. When we talk about teaching and learning during the pandemic, this pictures kind of describe it. Where we started, and now where we are, back in classrooms with kids and adults, enjoying education together. But the most important thing is what we accomplished the past 2 years, we accomplished together. It took and tested the entire village to stay together, to stay on that strategic plan that you just heard about, to be where we are today. Something we're extremely proud of is that we continued our direct instruction. As you'll see on the slide, we turned our supplies that are in classrooms and schools and got every single piece out into homes, into thousands now of separate classrooms. And it took staff, it took principals, it took bus drivers, teachers, support staff, everyone to rally board members, to be at school sites to deliver those supplies. Thank you to everyone who committed to doing that. Something else that we are extremely proud of is the balance of our agency, flexibility, and consistency. Again, referencing that strategic map that you just saw, if we want to be successful, we know that we have some of the best teachers and leaders and support staff in the country in Arcadia Unified. Not giving them agency doesn't allow them to fulfill all the talents that they have. And so one of our immediate things that we committed to is we are going to trust our people to make the decisions that they need to make in real time. The flexibility, where that was tested when we had a pandemic and we had a huge forest fire in our hillside, and the flexibility of teachers to move who didn't have internet connection, or entire classrooms and families who couldn't go home, who didn't have internet connection, the flexibility to still make school work, and the consistency that we will be here, your teacher will be online, not in a school classroom, but they'll be online at 9 o'clock every day for you. And we know that consistency provides those protective factors for kids and for families. We continued our LCAP process, which you've heard about before, and we really focused on the big picture of literacy and social emotional supports. We didn't roll through a 7-hour-a-day curriculum and just hope kids picked it up, but teachers did an amazing job of boiling things down to what do kids really need to know going through this. And then our interventions. We could have walked away, said, no, we're just giving the core instruction, but every intervention that we have during our regular school year, our teachers and our principals and our psychologists and our counselors figured out how to make those virtual and make them highly effective in a virtual environment. And again, thank you to all of those who committed and pulled off. It is a miracle, the work that you did for our students during that time. Next slide, please. That's the focus on students. But teaching and learning also involves adults. And so one of the things that we did, that we focused on in our professional development, our swag time, small working Arcadia groups, is that we had some grand plans in early March of 2020 of what our professional development was going to look like. On March 13th, that came to a crashing halt. So we decided we're not going to just go through with what we had planned. We are going to make our swag time about immediate needs. We're going to turn it over to sites to talk about, to grade levels, to individual classrooms. What do kids need? What do we need to serve our families and our kids the best? And so being able to downsize using that strategic model that our plan was X, but X is not the right path, Y is the right path. And again, the ability of our staff to pivot on a dime and do that for kids was amazing. And our consistency with common sense adjustments that were all built on trust. All of this was done through a screen without any personal conversations, but through phones, through screens, and leveraged the trust that we have in this district. That leads us right to student support. It's no surprise that recent research has found that districts who are collaborative, strong communicators, and forward-thinking were much better positioned to meet the unexpected challenges during the last 2 years. The Arcadia Unified School District exemplifies these strengths, which can clearly be seen in the efforts made to support social-emotional learning and the overall well-being of our students. Well before the pandemic, counselors were added by this board to each elementary school site, and on March 13th, 2020, the very day we closed, the high school received their first shipment of supplies to open a wellness center that had already been planned at AHS. Clearly, the focus on social-emotional supports for students is nothing new to AUSD and was not started just during the pandemic. These are just one example of how this district has been forward-thinking and responsive to the needs of our students, our staff, and our broader community. These efforts have made a tremendous impact on so many students. Our counseling teams across the district at each elementary, middle, and high school have built programs and on-campus spaces to support students, parents, and staff. Counselors and teachers have worked together to prioritize student well-being at school, both in and especially out of the classroom. These efforts have centered around 3 key areas: school-wide programs, student connection to school, and individual supports for students. The lists include, but are no way limited to, classroom lessons and activities at the elementary schools, focusing on social-emotional skills, not just academics. Evening parent presentations, hundreds of them over the past 2 years. The middle school's wellness summit that they developed from whole cloth because they knew that middle school students needed that mental health break. Mindful Mondays, Wellness Wednesdays, and wellness pop-up events at Arcadia High School, which our board had an opportunity to participate in a few weeks ago. In the classroom, counselors and teachers have created activities like restorative circles to build community and connection among students. Restorative practices training has also been provided for all new teachers and every teacher that enters Arcadia Unified School District for the past 6 years. Each school has worked to build student connections to school through additional clubs, sports, noon games, and lunch bunches where students can build positive friendships and learn teamwork. Schools are also dedicating physical wellness spaces like gardens, chill-out spots, and sensory pathways. Counselors work with students in small groups and also one-to-one settings and help connect parents to community resources when needed. And one of the key pieces of evidence in this student wellness is Arcadia Unified was one of the first districts to make their campuses open for athletics so kids could come back. When other districts would not open any other physical space, as soon as we knew we could do it safely, we opened our fields and our outdoor spaces so that kids could start to get back to campuses. You can't have student wellness if kids are hungry. Nutrition services, one of the really important aspects that truly served our students and our entire community at the onset of the pandemic that we briefly want to talk about and recognize our remarkable nutrition services department. Immediately after hearing that our schools would be temporarily closing for our nutritional services staff, led by Kathleen Ashworth, began planning to serve students and the community in a whole new way. School nutrition departments nationwide suddenly became essential workers, a term we're now very familiar with. Overnight, their mission changed from feeding just some AUSD students to feeding and providing meals to anyone under 18 in the entire community. Within 4 days, we had constructed a strategic plan, packaged thousands of meals, set up a pickup location at Arcadia High School, communicated with parents in the community, and were ready to hand out free breakfasts and lunches to every single person in the Arcadia community under the age of 18. Within a week, we had volunteers signing up from all over the district to help with this enormous task. The many volunteers included teachers, our superintendent, administrators, our board members, custodians, nurses, office staff, our principals, our administrators. Many of them are here tonight, who were out in the sun and out in the rain to hand out those meals every single day. Again, not just to students, not just to our families, but to our entire community. Between March 17th and the end of the school year in June 2020, the nutrition services team fed over 62,000 meals. When we learned that students would not be returning to campus for the 2021 school year, nutrition services once again pivoted to a new, more manageable plan. They would provide a drive-through meal pickup at each school site throughout the district. That's every elementary school, every middle school, and the high school. Despite being short-staffed and braving the brutal heat and the thick smoke of the Bobcat fire, our team distributed over 400,000 and over 431,000 free meals to students during the distance learning year. With students back on campus for the current year, the waivers and free meal programs continue again, and we have now served over 700,000 meals. What an amazing accomplishment, and again, it took a village to do that. Thank you.
Like our students and our staff, the school board had to reimagine what it looks like to continue to do their business, to have school boards meetings in the virtual setting. I know I can speak on behalf of the board that we were so fortunate to already have in place a student rep to the board that during those dark days of isolation, we constantly had a student perspective and a student voice coming to us at every board meeting, representing those students on the board. So very fortunate tonight to be able to hear from our student representative, Ava Wu.
Hello, good evening. My name is Ava Wu. I'm a senior at Arcadia High, and I've been in the Arcadia Unified School District since kindergarten. So First, I'd like to touch on and really highlight student collaboration. So I could keep you here all night with different examples, but I tried to pick different stories that really spread out through the last 2 years. So first off, I'd like to talk about virtual club meetings. So clubs are a great way for students to bond with each other over shared interests. This isn't new information. But over the last year, this was no different, and if anything, I think it was easier to get involved and explore what different clubs had to offer, because all you had to do was click a link. So the club I have in the upper right-hand corner of the slide presented is Food Science Club. So Food Science Club was a new club that started last year, and this was a screenshot from their mug cake workshop. So other events they had included a collaboration with UC Davis's Food Tech Club to learn more about food tech industry and how to get involved with food science. So although this club was started by students last year, it continues this year to meet weekly, and I picked this club specifically because I've been to some of the meetings, and you can really see how engaged the students are to be there over the shared interest of food, with things such as carbonation workshops, presentations about caffeine, food, aroma, taste, and I think that's just one really good example of one of our clubs on campus, and we have over 100. So going on below that is a picture from Link Crew's holiday baking social. So the reason I picked this screenshot is because, especially through the pandemic, a majority of my peers and myself, the only social interaction we had with people outside our own household was at school, whether that be through classroom discussions of what was on topic or off topic, specifically those teachers who dedicated time in class to really make sure that their students were still getting that social aspect of school in an isolated environment. So events like these, school-sponsored events, especially those made by students for students, were very important throughout the last 2 years in our social well-being. So going on, next to that, this picture of the students at the desk is, I think, a really inspiring story of students coming together and supporting each other academically. So that picture was taken at a morning study session in one of our French classes. So something unique about our French program is the teachers actually open up the classrooms before school and after school before a test so students can come together and study. So I was actually at the study session where this picture was taken. So what happened is this group of students were waiting in front of the class and then came in. And once they came in, they took the individual desks, mushed them all together to make one mega desk, plopped open their books, and started studying together. So one, that's really amazing to see. But what I think is even better is the fact that once I talked to my French teacher, I learned that that group of students hadn't been doing that all year. They originally came in as groups of 2, and then over time started talking to each other and forming this one big group and studying together. Also, some of those students are new students to the district, and since it's only a French 2 class, that means they originally had only started learning the language virtually last year. So I think just seeing that progression from going online to getting back into school and forming one big study group before school's even in session is really amazing. And then lastly, I have a poster from the Great Arcadia Takeout. So the Great Arcadia Takeout was a project led by some members of ASB in 2020. Yeah, at the end of 2020, actually, when we first went into quarantine, and it was advised by Dr. Cheung and Mr. Press. So this was a project in which those students reached out to support local restaurants and businesses in a way to maintain health and safety precautions, because a common thread throughout Arcadia High students is that many of them are very passionate about getting involved with our community and supporting our community. So what they did is they contacted those local businesses and restaurants and got their information, such as their updated business hours, their delivery service, what they provide, ordering, takeout, so on, and put it all on a website and advertise that out to the community to try to support those businesses and increase foot traffic in a way that was safe. So that concludes my slide, and thank you for having me.
So listening to Ava's report, such a strong reminder of the creative ways that our students and their clubs and their performing arts groups continue to figure out how to perform and create original content. In fact, our Arcadia High School APN News team is here tonight streaming this live, and I was so impressed during the pandemic that every week I could look forward to new content, even though they were going out of, operating out of their homes. So thank you to all of those students in APN for being here tonight. To honor those programs and provide a real treat for all of us tonight, I would like to welcome our very own Arcadia High School Chanteurs under the direction of Connie Tu. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. We are fortunate to be a destination district for both students and staff in Arcadia. Recruiting and hiring a world-class staff is led by our very own Assistant Superintendent of Human Resource Services, Dr. Hryrciw.
Thank you, Dr. Vanasdall. I want to start out tonight by simply thanking our world-class staff who have moved mountains over the past 2 years. With the help of our staff, we continue to experience many successes. Even in spite of the pandemic, and that coupled with a teacher shortage in the state of California, AUSD was able to fill 100% of certificated vacancies, including all special education teaching positions. In addition, we were able to cover teacher absences in the pandemic by raising sub rates and proactively hiring roving subs to work at school sites. And on the classified side of the house, we added more than 50 full-time benefited positions. Staff were incredibly flexible and agile during the pandemic, maintaining a steadfast commitment to servicing students and community. Whether it was teachers pivoting on a dime to provide instruction virtually, then hybrid, and finally back to in-person, or nurses setting up testing distribution centers and help hotlines to assist families trying to navigate the uncertainties of a pandemic. There are simply too many examples district-wide to mention. But all of our employees managed to reimagine their work to serve students in the community. And again, I want to thank our incredible staff. So how is AUSD able to achieve such success? It's all about attracting and retaining talent, which starts with a commitment from the Board of Education to maintain competitiveness in salaries. Despite being a district funded in the bottom third when measured against other districts in the state, we rank among the top salary-wise in the county for various employee groups. And equally, if not more important, our Board of Education models and has established expectations around healthy culture. However, I must point out that we don't do this work alone. We have incredible partners in our employee associations, ATA, APSA, and CSEA. And I want to recognize the leadership of ATA President Kevin Fox, APSA President Stephanie Perez, and CSEA President Valerie Serio. The secret to our success lies in interest-based bargaining and frequent forums where we are able to lean into our values to wisely solve problems at the lowest level. As we look ahead to next school year, HR is in the process of hiring a new group of stellar employees that will only add to the diverse fabric of our amazing staff. Our HR mission is not simply to fill jobs, but to find the right person to serve in each position. Thank you.
All right, we know that student success requires a strong community culture. We also know organizations focus on what they monitor. Having an annual audit of our culture is critical to ensuring we are living out our values on a daily basis and can make adjustments when we fall short. Dr. Mendoza, Coordinator of Instructional Integration, is one of the key leaders in this effort.
Thank you, Dr. Vanasdall. Good evening. Arcadia Unified has been working on the Better Together Research Practice Partnership with the University of California, San Diego since the 2018-2019 school year to dig deeper into the culture and climate. Little did we know that the world would change in the upcoming year. We have been measuring our climate and culture based on a survey instrument that we co-designed with UCSD to provide us with valid, reliable, and actionable data. Through the pandemic, AUSD staff has been successfully completing these surveys for the past 4 years. We also believe in seeking input from our students and parents as they are core partners in our work. Surveys are targeted to students and their parents of specific grade level groups to enable us to follow cohorts over time to look for trends. Our data over the course of time for all stakeholder groups has indicated general positive growth. The data showed strong connections and trust among our sites and throughout our district, and how that focus on trust has positively impacted other areas of climate and culture. We continue to be impressed with the power and potential of the relationships we are strengthening across the district and the impacts of those relationships on sense of belonging and student agency. Even more impressive was that throughout the pandemic, we continued to collect data, and the results indicated that our relationships, particularly around trust, maintained and our social networks grew stronger. A variety of data points from this important partnership have been included as measures in our local control accountability plan. We are also very excited to share that Dr. David Vanasdall was invited and recently presented at the American Educational Research Association annual conference to share the work of partnership and the impressive gains over time. We are currently in the process of collecting data for the 2021-22 school year. Dr. Hacking and I encourage all our staff to participate and our students and parents of grades 3, 6, 9, and 12 to continue to complete their surveys. Arcadia Unified and UC San Diego in our Better Together Research Practice Partnership appreciate the time our educational partners take in participating in this survey. Thank you.
The pandemic placed an additional burden on students that often have the greatest needs. Leading our special education program and meeting those needs, Dr. Catherine Mahoney.
I appreciate the opportunity to express how proud I am to be the director of the Arcadia Unified School District Special Education Department and share the amazing work of so many people. It is an absolute honor to work with such an exceptional group of educators, classified staff, support providers, administrators, and families to support our students with disabilities. While our special education department has had an exceptional reputation for many years, the last several years exemplified what sets us apart. While we worked with rapidly changing legal mandates, our focus on students never wavered. Despite federal funding at approximately 8% versus the 40% promised by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act when it was adopted, the highest caliber special education supports and services have been innovated and provided to our students with disabilities and their families, especially since March of 2020. We focused, under the direction of Dr. Vanasdall and the Board of Education, the exec team, on certain keywords: space and grace, health and safety, being thoughtful and collaborative, focusing on parent partnerships, and a strong focus on instruction and supports to students. Teachers and service providers reimagined their work from the ground up, learning new technology and approaches to best meet the needs of students. They participated in professional learning, worked with new learning platforms, and developed individualized learning activities and packets that were delivered to students' homes. As you can see by the parade that was had by our preschool team, who went around to their students' homes to deliver those packets and programs and activities in person. They did this and more, while also many managed the distance learning program for their own children, as many are parents here within Arcadia Unified School District. Their efforts not only kept students engaged and partnered with families, but also created a wonderful community during really challenging times. Our special education staff have always prioritized building strong collaborative relationships, but we didn't truly understand the importance of those until we transitioned to distance learning and relied on them so heavily. Our parents have been wonderful partners who learned more about the way their children learned, how to best support their children, and were open to coaching and supported our staff in order for our students to remain engaged and learning. As part of the West San Gabriel Valley Special Education Local Plan Area, or SELPA, which is a consortium of 14 local school districts who work together to provide a wide range of appropriate services to students with disabilities, we were able to continue to meet those wide array of student needs. Students received highly specialized instruction to support needs such as visual impairments, significant medical needs, and more. We could not have done the work we do and have done without our fantastic colleagues in so many departments: transportation, business services, human resources, and education services. Students with disabilities were and are considered and planned for right alongside all other Arcadia Unified School District students, from our fantastic bus drivers who were delivering some of those packets as well and returning them back to their teachers at school sites. Our program specialists worked tirelessly to take care of a million details that were in the background so that site staff could focus on instruction and students. We maintained our instructional aid positions throughout distance learning because we acknowledged and recognized and honored how they were key members of the educational team for students. This year, we were able to convert, as Dr. Hryrciw mentioned, 59 part-time instructional aid positions to full-time positions, which directly resulted in more consistent supports for classrooms and schools. The seamless collaboration and interaction amongst all the departments is integral to our successful program. Our related service providers, such as occupational therapists, physical therapists, adaptive PE specialists, school psychologists, speech and language pathologists, learned how to provide services and assess students in brand new ways. They came to sites and set up special assessment centers wearing all the PPE that they were not familiar with, and that was gotten for us by various departments and supported by Ms. Newkirk, our district nurse. Teams quickly transitioned to virtual IEP meetings for students. Many of the innovations and new approaches to our processes have continued. Special educators have taken advantage of their new learning to continue to meet student and family needs. High levels of collaboration, creativity, and flexibility have persisted even when we return to in-person learning. There have been many challenges with such a big transition for students from being at home for so long to coming back to schools in person, while we also are helping them adhere to health and safety mandates. And our staff has put so much time and care into teaching students to tolerate masks and to be feeling safe and secure back at a school site. They've worked diligently to support the social emotional needs of their students. Because of all their hard work, students are accessing school. Our site administrators have been the heart of our schools for all of us throughout the past 2 years. They've ensured all students and staff got what they needed during distance learning and upon their return to in-person learning. They created strong communities, they have been strong communicators, and have developed caring and inclusive communities for all learners. As we move into the 2022-2023 school year, we are excited about maintaining strong communication, collaboration, and creativity in meeting the needs of all students. We will be continuing our work of creating inclusive environments for all students while also providing a continuum of programs, helping each student achieve and work towards the goals and outcomes developed by our teams.
We often use the term partnership when speaking about our parents. This has never been as vital as we saw during the pandemic when all of our parents became full-time teachers in their home, sitting next to their students, helping, supporting the education that was happening virtually. Our PTA parents not only did that, but they also elevated to the level of ensuring that all of our students had an enhanced experience, even though things were often virtually or drive-through or you name it, the number of events that we got to see our students experience during the pandemic. With us tonight, very pleased to have our PTSA Council President, Jennifer Vargo, who I have to add, didn't know what she was getting into for her first term. But then she stuck around for the second term and said, I'm still going to stick with you, even though we're still in the pandemic. And so, Jennifer, thank you for your leadership and everything you've done.
Thank you very much. As he mentioned, I'm the president of Arcadia Council PTA, and tonight I'm going to be talking about PTA's work during the pandemic, where we are now, and the outlook going forward. And you can switch the slide. All right. First, I want to share a little basic information about PTA, about the structure of PTA, because over my past 12 years in PTA, I found that a lot of PTA members and even active volunteers don't even know how they fit in the bigger picture. So, there's the structure. Each school's PTA is called a unit PTA, and in Arcadia we have 10 unit PTAs, which all belong to Arcadia Council. And then above that we have Arcadia Council, then above that we have First District PTA, which covers 21 local councils stretching all the way from Burbank to Pomona. And then above that, we have California State PTA, and then National PTA. And all of these entities work together with the mission of positively impacting the lives of all children and families. During the pandemic, PTAs on all levels pivoted, from National PTA all the way down to the unit PTAs. Meetings and other activities like conventions and legislative conferences were moved online, just like our kids' educational instruction was. And Council PTA had to look at many of our traditional programs through a new lens. For example, for years, Council PTA has coordinated the Can You Help Food Drive program, which took the form of individual food drives at each of the schools. However, with schools operating remotely, we needed to reimagine the program. In November 2020, we worked with Downtown Arcadia to put on the first of 3 community-wide food drives benefiting Foothill Unity Center. Families and principals and teachers, some of which I see here, from every school came to support and collect donated items in a safe and secure drive-through environment. And you can see up there, the first picture is Baldwin Stalker's mascot and a couple of parent volunteers directing traffic into the Denny's parking lot where the drive-through event was being held. And then below is one of the 2 trucks that were filled with the donations from that day. Throughout the pandemic, Arcadia PTAs brought other programs and events to our students in innovative and creative ways. The Reflections program continued at every school, and Council PTA held virtual Reflections Awards ceremonies twice. I see Jennifer Ledesma here was our Reflections chair one year. Despite not being able to gather together at the PAC to celebrate as we have in the past, students still received recognition for their achievement, just in a different way. Many units also held programs online during the pandemic, like Holly Avenue's virtual family STEAM nights. That one there, I think, is a JPL engineer came and talked to them about finding life on other planets. And many events were redesigned to be drive-through or outdoors. At Camino, they held a drive-through Halloween event that was so popular that the car line stretched all the way down 6th Avenue to Camino Real. And book fairs were similarly modified. Right there is, oh, too fast. On the previous, right there. Book fairs were similarly modified. Here's a drive-through fair set up at Holly Avenue for safe shopping. Volunteers also continue to help with the work of schools during the pandemic. At Arcadia High School, volunteers were on site at the drive-through book distribution and collection events, working hard alongside the teachers and staff. Now you can change slides. After 2 years of modified activity due to public health conditions, many school PTAs are now returning to more traditional in-person events. They've become agile, making plans with the understanding that another variant or surge could come along that would require them to make quick adjustments. Here are some pictures of just a few great events I saw this year. We've got Hugo Reed's Snow Day, where they trucked in 15 tons of snow to the campus. Their Lunar New Year Festival, where Fenton was present and did the lion dance and kung fu presentation for the kids during the day. Diwali celebration, and then Camino Grove's Ice Cream Social, which they had at every grade level in the year to bring people back and get to know their grade level again. They had a trunk or treat at Camino Grove up there, and their Winter Family Fun Night. Some units have also resumed big events, like Highland Oaks and Camino Grove, who just held their carnivals in late April. And some units have also started new programs. For example, Foothills PTSA set up some fantastic diversity-focused speakers this year, including a woman who lived at a Japanese internment camp and the grandson of the labor movement leader, Cesar Chavez. Last but not least, all the units held fantastic teacher appreciation events at their school sites this past week. And that brings us to today. Our PTAs are actively in the process of making plans for next year. They're making those plans knowing that the conditions may change, but that's just part of the new normal. Some units still have work ahead of them in terms of filling their boards and committee positions. So for any parents out there who are looking for an opportunity to get involved, now is the time to reach out to your PTA president or school principal. We're always looking for new volunteers to carry on the traditions and the work of PTA.
Thank you. That was so inspirational. I feel like we should pass out membership cards at this time, so I appreciate that. So the best mitigation to the spread of COVID proved to be a comprehensive plan that targeted air quality, clean surfaces and touch points, as well as distancing when needed. Here tonight to share this work and standing in for Dirk Esslin is our Tony Barrios, Director for Facilities and Operational Services.
Good evening. So in regards to COVID-19 safety, the district standards approach started with the LA County Health Department requirements. Arcadia Unified met or exceeded all health department requirements and recommendations. I would like to thank all of our operations staff, maintenance staff, and bus drivers who supported the preparation for the return of students and staff. Staff district-wide were provided personal protective equipment, including hand sanitizers for every classroom, office, and various locations. When students returned to the class and shared desks and chairs, they wiped down all the shared items with a 75% alcohol-based hand wipe, which kills 99% of viruses, and also did not require Department of Pesticide Regulations, DPR training. We continue cleaning and disinfecting of our campuses before and during after school with the electrostatic sprayers to distribute a peroxide-based disinfecting solution. Our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems filters were upgraded along with increasing the outside fresh air intake. We installed bipolar ionization units, which produce positive and negatively charged oxygen ions. These ions travel into the room and neutralize bacteria, viruses, and odors. The ions also charge airborne particles, such as smoke, dust, and pollen, causing them to cluster and to be filtered out of the airstream. For positive case locations, we deployed our specially trained quick response deep cleaning crew, in which they used 2 large air scrubber machines with HEPA filters and ultraviolet air treatment, along with electrostatic sprayers. These upgrades and practices remain in place and are still being adhered to. In regards to facilities updates, in November of 2021, we sold the final installment of our 2006 Measure I facilities bonds. We received about $29 million at a very low interest rate for our taxpayers. In conjunction with other district facilities reserves, we have begun to undertake the final round of approved projects for Measure I. We have completed district-wide LED upgrades for both indoor and outdoors, along with upgrading HVAC controls to reduce our electricity usage. Upcoming projects include elementary playground wood chip replacement with the surface made of soft rubber tiles as seen in these pictures. At the same time, we will be replacing all playground structures at all elementary schools. In collaboration with the site administrators beginning this summer, we will also begin to add shade structures as seen in this picture at all the elementary and middle school campuses. Next slide. Lastly, as an encouragement for you to attend our next Board of Education meeting on May 24th, this is a small preview of our proposed location of a new classroom building for Holly Avenue Elementary School, replacing all the aging portables that we have there. At the next board meeting, we will be presenting the architectural renderings of the new building. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Simply put, a virtual world requires a connected world. Thankfully, our technology department, led by Scott Bramley, has been envisioning and implementing the classroom of the future far before the pandemic. Needless to say, we were better prepared than most.
Thank you, Dr. Vanasdall. Good evening, everyone. Arcadia Unified School District has been a leader in education and instructional technology for over 30 years. In the 2016-2017 school year, AUSD reached a device-to-student ratio of 1-to-1, ensuring all students in grades TK through 12 have access to a Chromebook whenever it is needed. By March of 2020, students, teachers, staff, and administrators had become very comfortable with the use of technology, making the overnight transition from in-person to remote instruction a challenging but realistic possibility. Instead of trying to purchase, configure, and distribute devices, we were able to focus on supporting teaching and learning and expanding the role of technology in our new virtual classrooms. After more than a year of remote learning and with less than a month to prepare, we learned that students would have the option to return after spring break 2021. AUSD's commitment to keeping our students with their same teacher met another new challenge: simultaneous instruction for those electing to return to the classroom, along with those who chose to remain at home. Knowing our existing classroom technology was inadequate for this purpose, we were able to battle the supply chain issues to purchase, receive, and install a Chromebox, 2 24-inch monitors, a webcam, a new document camera, and audio integration with existing classroom speakers in every AUSD classroom prior to their return. Employees from every district department were needed to execute this plan. Our instructional and innovation coaches quickly created easily-to-follow instructions and videos, and our teachers were amazing returning to new technology and quickly adapting to yet another new way of teaching our students. This past fall, with the support of our outstanding maintenance team, we were fortunate to be able to replace aging dim classroom projectors with bright, high-resolution 75-inch displays in all classrooms. Our years of focus on technology in all areas of our organization allowed us to move from supporting over 10,000 students, teachers, staff, and administrators in person to supporting them remotely. Many legacy processes had to quickly adapt to our new remote reality. Two examples of those changes that occurred within the first week of the lockdown were the creation of a process for virtual board meetings live streamed to our community. As a result of this change, we continue to live stream the meetings to our public even after the return to traditional board meetings. Our student enrollment process was modified within days of our shutdown from an in-person meeting at the Arcadia Education Center to an all-electronic process that is much more manageable for the district and for our families. Many of these modernized processes are now helping AUSD to run more efficiently as COVID restrictions are eased. Moving forward, we're working closely with our Education Services Department to pilot 3 new enhancements to our Power School Student Information System: Schoology Learning Management System, Performance Matters Data and Assessment System, and Power School Special Programs. These new systems will improve our current educational needs as well as keeping us prepared for any unforeseen changes due to existing programs in the future. Finally, I would like to express my appreciation for the Technology and Information Services staff for their work throughout the pandemic, repairing devices, drive-through Chromebook exchanges, and yes, even supporting home Wi-Fi for staff and students. I would also like to thank our past and current board members for their unwavering support of technology use in Arcadia Unified School District. Thank you.
The role of innovation and strategy knows no boundaries. It goes wherever it's needed, and it helps support scaling up programs in real time. No one could have predicted that under this title would also come Director of COVID Testing for AUSD students and staff. Leading this effort is Greg Gazanian, Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer.
Thank you, Dr. Vanasdall. And good evening, everyone. I'm excited to share the work of the Strategy and Innovation Department this evening, but before I do, I have a bit of a secret to share with you. The Strategy and Innovation Department is not a traditional department. With its goal of taking on new and necessary challenges in Arcadia Unified, Strategy and Innovation is actually a large network of people. Staff, students, parents, administrators, and community members who all take on these new and necessary challenges for the good of all of our students. And if innovation is about doing new and useful things, then our network grew to well over 20,000 people during these past years. During the pandemic, everyone in our community has stretched. They have entered into a perpetual state of innovation as we have learned to live in this quickly evolving reality. Here are a few ways that this has happened in Arcadia Unified. During the summer of 2021, the increased need for COVID-19 testing availability in Arcadia Unified became very apparent. We immediately reached out to testing providers and the LA County Office of Education to determine what options were available to provide testing for our staff and students. The Innovation Network immediately became active. Our health experts analyzed the options. Our Business Services Department reviewed and processed contracts. Our operations staff built a full medical carrier service to provide testing at each of our district sites. And our health services staff distributed those COVID tests to those who needed it. Almost overnight, we launched an extensive testing program, which to date has provided over 38,000 COVID tests. We continue to be prepared to support our staff and students as the pandemic requires. In addition to COVID-19 testing, our Innovation Grant Program has provided extensive resources to staff and students over the past several years. Through the grant program, teachers, staff, and administrators can request funding or other types of support for apps, hardware, furniture, or other resources to provide instructional or social-emotional support for their students. Just a few examples of these grants include new furniture to allow for additional spacing for safety and flexible learning environments, funding for the creation and expansion of wellness centers across the district to support students' social and emotional well-being, dozens of new software apps to customize instruction for students based on their academic needs, 3D printers to allow students to design and then print engineering projects, whether they happen to be on campus or even while they were remote during COVID. Funding for the creation of STEM labs, that is science, technology, engineering, math, and also makerspace labs. Also, we funded a grant for remote streaming hardware and software so that a teacher during the pandemic could actually live stream remote field trips. And I want to be clear, many, if not all of these ideas come from the teachers and the staff and the administrators. It's that network activating to meet the needs of our students. In addition to these classroom and school-focused innovation grants, the Strategy and Innovation Network has also allowed for the piloting of technology that became essential during the pandemic, such as early exploration of large classroom displays and Chromebox teaching stations, much like Mr. Bramley described earlier. And this goes back to the strategy that Dr. Vanasdall described earlier. We are constantly looking for opportunities and possible needs down the line, and we are piloting and exploring things so that when that moment comes, it feels like things happen quickly, but we have resourced and explored and we're knowledgeable in these options before they become necessary. One of the most powerful things about a network is that once it has been created, it does not easily disappear. The creativity, confidence, and connections that come from a network continue the work that has already been started. Innovation has never been stronger in Arcadia Unified, and we will continue to foster new and useful opportunities in the context of our values in ways that best support our students, staff, and community. Even looking into the audience right now, I see that network, the folks who not only challenge and inspire students to make a positive impact on their world, but they themselves have made a positive and profound impact on their world and in Arcadia Unified. And for that, I'm very grateful. Thank you.
In a quickly changing world with new sweeping health orders, often revealed in late holiday weekend press conferences, the role of communications became a balance of timeliness and accuracy. We are fortunate to have the best. Ryan Foran, Chief Communications Officer.
Thank you, Dr. Vanasdall, and good evening, everyone. So the Public Information Office consists of myself, Amber Nuvali, who is our incredible Public Information Officer, and our 26 absolutely wonderful Arcadia High School students who serve as digital communication interns with us, and two of them are here tonight, Angelina and Claire. Similar to what Scott alluded to with technology and so many of our other departments, we were fortunate to have the personnel and resources already in place thanks to our Board of Education and Superintendent placing a very high value on communications. The fact that this district had 2 full-time communication staff and a well-established student internship program as the pandemic unfolded, that put us in a great position to help our students, staff, and community. Like everyone, we too just needed to reimagine a bit how to best support everyone, and we knew communication and information were our new lifelines with our Arcadia Unified community. Friday, March 13th, 2020, at 11:26 a.m., Coronavirus Update 10 was sent, announcing the shocking news that the Los Angeles County Office of Education is recommending all schools close for the next 2 weeks. At this point, we already had a dedicated coronavirus webpage with lots of information and resources and had already sent out 10 updates, keeping everyone current on what we knew and, frankly, what we didn't know at that time. From there, the monitoring of daily press conferences, as Dr. Vanasdall said, from the White House to the state capitol, all the way down to our local health officials, ramped up, and then digesting all that information and getting all of the relevant news to our students, staff, and families in a concise manner became paramount. Communications is a team sport, though, and we had a huge team helping with that. And a big thank to our principals, a lot of them who are here tonight and watching online, our teachers and counselors, who in addition to our 77 coronavirus updates and counting from the district now, they all did so much messaging and helped to support our students and families. And to all the staff who reads every single update, then they can help pass that information along to help support our students and families. We believe in the philosophy of it's much better to be second and right than first and wrong. So we had a very deliberate and strategic communication flow and process to ensure a lot of eyes, edits, and clarity instead of rushing and then having lots of corrections, redactions, and frustrations. Schools closed, hearts open became much more than a hashtag for us. As we know, the pandemic brought a lot of fear and anxiety to so many, but because we have a 2-person communications team with remarkable student interns, we took pride in also being able to boost morale a bit and share some of the many uplifting stories we witnessed in our schools that brought some rays of hope through those dark clouds. With all the updates and COVID information going out, we were still able to create a COVID-19 mental health and resources webpage for our community. A big thanks to Jim Anderson and our counselors for that. We still shared those positive stories with the media and the community. We got to see Apache News feature on ABC7, as they were likely one of the first high school news programs in the country to figure out how to broadcast from their bedrooms and their homes to keep APN going and to keep their audience informed. We saw our 3 Arcadia Unified Middle School choirs on the news doing a virtual and beautiful rendition of The Lion Sleeps Tonight. The Chanteurs, who we heard beautifully tonight, were featured on ABC7 for their incredible virtual rendition of the national anthem for the virtual 9/11 All-School Assembly. Hugo Reed Elementary students on KCAL 9 performing the national anthem remotely. Arcadia High alum Shauka Ying and her inspiring run on Jeopardy! Umberto, our fantastic custodian at Baldwin Stalker, and his Ghostbuster cleaning and disinfecting on Spectrum News, and many more. We also did our Nice Notes campaign and still managed to continue with our Arcadia First Day campaign in a new virtual format. Lastly, I want to point out 3 recognitions that our district recently received from the California School Public Relations Association in its Excellence in Communications Award program. 1 award of excellence to our DCI students for their new AUSD Today news reports that we launched this year. Truly amazing work. We received another award of excellence for the COVID-19 close contacts infographic that our public information officer, Amber Nuvali, created, and which was borrowed by a lot of school districts throughout the country. And Dr. Vanasdall received the first ever Superintendent's Award by CalSPR for all his support and advocating statewide for communications and public education. Now that we continue to move forward, the PIO office can also move forward and concentrate on helping with additional community engagements opportunities, like this event tonight, enrollment, and any other challenges or opportunities that will benefit our community. Thank you.
Getting the most out of every dollar requires a direct and deep relationship between fiscal services and educational services. We are fortunate to have a fiscal team that understands conservative budgeting with targeted spending to ensure we can support a world-class education for our Arcadia families. Here tonight to share our budget updates is David Vong.
Thank you, Dr. Vanasdall. Good evening. I'll be focusing on 3 things in the budget update tonight. First, I'll start off with the Local Control Funding Formula, or LCFF, and provide a brief overview of the funding methodology. Then I'll share some key financial metrics for Arcadia Unified compared to the state average. Lastly, I'll touch on the declining enrollment trend and the impact that'll have on our budget going forward. Now, starting with the LCFF. It's the primary source of funding for public schools in California, which is based on the average daily attendance of our students. There are 2 primary components to the LCFF. The first component is the base grant. The base grant provides a standard amount per student by grade span. The second component is the adjustment for what the state considers at-risk students, classified as low-income, English learner, or foster youth. These students in these classifications are commonly referred to as unduplicated pupils because they're only counted once, even if they may fall into more than one of these classifications. The adjustments come from 2 primary two primary grants, the supplemental grant and the concentration grant. The 2 grants are determined by the number of unduplicated pupils in the district. The supplemental grant provides an additional 20% of the base grant for each unduplicated pupil. For reference, the average base grant per student in Arcadia is about $9,000. The 20% provided by the supplemental grant would amount to an additional $1,800 per unduplicated pupil. If the percentage of unduplicated pupils exceeds 55% of the total pupil count, the district is entitled to a concentration grant. Unfortunately, the unduplicated pupil percentage for Arcadia Unified is only 34%, so we are not eligible for the concentration grant. Our district only receives a supplemental grant. On average, the LCFF provides Arcadia Unified with about $9,300 per year for each student, which amounts to $88.4 million in the current year. When we compare our LCFF funding per pupil with the other 47 unified school districts in LA County, we're ranked 36. So we're in the bottom third of the county in regards to funding. Here's some financial metrics for Arcadia Unified compared to the state average. I'll briefly touch on each one. In the first row, as I mentioned earlier, our average LCFF funding per pupil in Arcadia is $9,300, while the state average is $10,600. That is a 14% difference. The lower funding for Arcadia is due to the lower unduplicated pupil percentage, or UPP, which is on the second row. Again, AUSD is not eligible for the concentration grant because our UPP is below the 55% threshold. As you can see, the state average UPP is over 63%. For reference, if AUSD was funded at the state average UPP, we would receive an additional $9 million annually. In the third row, we have the general fund reserve percentages, which represent the cash balance as a percentage of the total annual expenses. The higher the reserve percentage, the better off the district is financially. Arcadia Unified ended last school year with a general fund reserve of 23.3%, or 1 percentage point above the state average of 22.3%, despite the lower funding we receive. The story I'm trying to tell with this data is how well the district has managed its budget despite receiving less than average funding. I would love to take credit for the district's financial stability. However, I've learned over the last few years that this has been a collective effort. This includes the leadership of our Board of Education, administrators effectively managing their budgets, the contributions from our teachers and staff, to the generous support we receive from the various parent and community organizations, past and present. As a fiscal director, I'm very grateful because it makes my job a lot easier. But as an Arcadia resident and a parent of 2 kids in our schools, I'm also very appreciative of the benefits the financial stability provides our students, our staff, and our community. The last thing I wanted to share was the ongoing decline in enrollment. In the last 3 years, AUSD has seen enrollment decrease by 5.5%. We're a little better than the rest of the state, which is at 6% over that same period of time, but this is definitely a financial risk. Fortunately, the issue isn't isolated within our community. This is a pervasive issue across the state that's been widely discussed and documented. The governor and legislators have proposals to help mitigate the financial impact of declining enrollment, which seem promising based on the widespread support. However, regardless of pending legislation, the fundamental financial strategies we've established at AUSD, specifically with our conservative budgeting practices and prudent spending, have served us well. And we'll continue these practices, monitoring changes in funding and making adjustments as needed to ensure we maintain our financial stability going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. It's at this point in a State of the District presentation that I have this sense like there should be a big reveal, right? Like now moving forward, something you've never seen before. Honestly, that just wouldn't be Arcadia, and I would hope that all of you would be sitting out there saying, really? That doesn't sound like Arcadia. When I opened tonight, I talked about that consistency and that stability. And I hope you heard tonight how that consistency and that stability has played through. Because in essence, the values that we have achieved together in Arcadia over 50 years are the same values that allowed us to be successful during the pandemic and continuing in the pandemic, I want to add, and will continue to be the values that we will lean on as we move forward. You hear a lot of things in the press about the magic bullet of software or that summer program that we're going to do that's going to help with the learning loss that have happened over the pandemic. What we know and what research will demonstrate is there is no silver bullet. There's no one-time fix. There's not something a teacher's going to do one time and fix that. What we do know is that in Arcadia, we've been working on a multi-tiered system of support for years. And what that means is, and it was explained a little tonight, is it means, first of all, good teaching the first time by all of our staff. And we're so fortunate to have that world-class staff. And then monitoring in a timely basis so that no student ever falls through the gaps. You just don't hear that anymore in Arcadia because it just doesn't happen. And then to know and have a tool belt full that when a student needs that support, and all students, no matter where they are on the academic level, need support at different times during their academic career. This isn't about some students, it's about all students. And in the end, they get that timely support when they need it, at the level they need it, so that every student walks across that stage. And we are so fortunate to see graduation rates, wow, at around 99.5%, 99, 100%. It's outstanding, but it's because of that work and not accepting no for any child, recognizing that our responsibility is to graduate every student that walks through our doors and ensure that they're ready at a very high level for the next level, whatever that choice might be. So we've stayed the course, and I'm very proud of that. There's a slide earlier in the presentation that I showed about the linear model and the paralysis model, and the model that we went with. One of the things I forgot to point out is that human nature, I understand it, is that people want to be in control. People want to say, no, we're going to plan, in 2 weeks we're going to come back. And the fact is, we don't always get to be in control in public education. We don't get to always make all of the decisions. But what we do control is living out our values each and every day and ensuring that what we do in our classrooms, on our schools, is delivering a world-class education, regardless of what that environment looks like. In our schools, as we move forward, I wish tonight we were saying that we're on the other end of the pandemic and that we're not discussing safety, focused on safety as much as we've been. But it will continue. What you heard tonight will continue forward into the future. We are not out of it yet, and we will continue with all safety measures to make sure that our environments, our campuses are safe for all students and staff. I wanted to discuss two challenges, if you'll move the slide forward. The other things I mentioned, the continuation with MTSS, the continuation with health and safety focus, that's just work. We know that work ahead. We've identified it, and it continues. It's hard work, but we will continue to move that forward. The two challenges I want to share with you tonight are work that we don't often have the answers to right now, but it's work that we recognize and value as a board, as administrative staff, that we have to focus on in order to maintain and continue to be a successful school district. The first one is enrollment. This isn't an Arcadia problem, but we don't get to live in a bubble. We are dealing with this. All of California is dealing with an increase, or I should say a decrease in birth rates and an increase in the amount of families moving out of state. And this is becoming a real issue. Currently, there's some legislation that may change this in the future they're talking about, but currently, our funding model is directly tied to our attendance. And sometimes people often ask about that and talk about it as it's just this pot of money. But I want to be clear, our funding is directly connected to our programs for students, the staffing of our programs and the specific programs. And as we decline, we have to live within our means, right? We're not a business, that's our funding model, that's the money we get. So we have to continue to live within our means, which means as enrollment declines, we have to chip away at those world-class programs and services that our community, our parents have come to expect. So our goal as we move forward, and I think this is everyone's responsibility, is first of all to make sure that we are recruiting and retaining our own students that are here in Arcadia and that are choosing to maybe go to alternative schools. To make sure that it's not the best kept secret in the San Gabriel Valley, that we are out sharing the great things that are going on in Arcadia and the opportunities that all students have in Arcadia. And then secondly, looking how to recruit new families to Arcadia. We're looking forward to some housing developments that may have stalled in Arcadia, but we're hoping that that continues to develop in the future, that brings in additional homes. We are a family of homes in Arcadia, and so we're looking forward to continuing to grow that family. The second one is building and maintaining community. This has been a real challenge. I don't know how to say that any differently during the pandemic. We are living in times that are very divisive. At every turn, people are trying to divide us and force us into corners and tell us how different we are from each other. There's something we have that's very special, and it's why I'm so blessed and fortunate to be in the field of education and why I get up and look forward to coming to work every day. We have something that we share in Arcadia that is very powerful. Regardless if you are here because you're a staff or a parent, you are here because you value a world-class education. And that brought you to Arcadia, or allowed you to stay with great sacrifice. No one just ends up in Arcadia and says, oh, what's the schools or what's going on around here? You're here for a reason. And that denominator of that shared interest in public education, and more importantly, a world-class public education, has to be our focus. At every meeting, in every conversation, we are the weavers of the community. That's our role. That's what we do. As educators, as parents, we are not just a school district. We are as good as our partnership with the city, with the library, the police. Families want a safe environment. They want services. They want parks. All of us have to work together to continue to focus on that common denominator of why we are here and what brings us together. Not why we're different, but what we have in common and why we are better together. I'm convinced that that work is the work that's the most important ahead of us as a community. I'm convinced that there are people that want to stop that and aren't looking for people to be together. And I challenge you, I challenge all of us, the board, that as we meet in our PTA groups, as we meet as teachers, as we meet as parents, that you be the voice when those voices start to creep in and that divide, because it's easy to find them. That you be the voice, you have the courage to stand up and say, that's not going to work here. That's not okay here in Arcadia. We have a job to do. We have a focus. We're here for our students. We're here to build community and provide a safe and enjoyable, a joyful. I shared this at I think the PTA meeting where I went to get my teeth cleaned the other day, and the person working on me said, oh my gosh, you were my principal at Arcadia High School. And I did share, there was that moment they had sharp objects in their mouth, and I was like, oh, please have a good experience. And they did. They just lit up. And the lady said, I loved growing up in Arcadia. I loved that experience. That's what we want for all of our students. And I also want to say that there's no one uniquely positioned like public education to model for our students. And by the way, we all know our students are spreading out around this entire world when they graduate. They're going to all corners of the world, and they are going to be serving as leaders in their capacity, no matter what they choose. We know that. We see it. We hear it. They're coming back to share with us. We have to model for them what civil discourse looks like. That you can disagree. You can sit next to someone. You can have lunch with someone and completely disagree with politics, with their politics. And you can share your ideas. You can share your opinions. And you should have a safe place to do that. And then together, you should be able to move forward. And together, your ideas will be better than either one of you alone. I look forward to that challenge, but that challenge is for all of us, and I look forward to having more discussions with the school board, with our staff, with our community. And that inclusive engagement, I can't think of a better place that can lead that is our partnership with PTA. They're already doing that because when they come together, it's about the students, right? They don't care your religion, your ethnicity. It's about how can we get together and volunteer and make a better experience for our students. And so those two challenges, our future enrollment, keeping Arcadia strong, keeping our programs strong, and ensuring that we continue to build a community that cares and values education. Those are our two challenges ahead. If you move this last slide, I'm going to share, I was just recently in one of our learning walks at our campuses at an elementary, and I'm so inspired when I get to do those learning walks and talk to students. I knelt down at a table with a couple third grade girls, and they were working on their leadership. I just blanked on the Leader in Me. The Leader in Me program, and I believe it was number 2, and it was begin with the end in mind, right? Habit number 2. And they were writing their goals, or they had already written their goals, they were revisiting their goals and talking about if they had met their goals or not. And so in thinking about tonight and their inspiration and always teaching me, continuing to teach me, I wanted to end with this quote. First of all, please know the state of the district is strong. It's strong. And as we open tonight, Mr. Cheung sharing Fenton Ng, board members' words from pre-pandemic, those two characters of crisis and opportunity. As we think about that, I want to thank each and every member of this community because you did that. Not only were you thinking about today and the safety and that maximizing education, but you were learning. You were writing down notes, you were sharing, we were collaborating, we had board meetings where we were documenting what we're learning, what went wrong. You know, learning from failure is one of our values. It's up on the wall. It's okay. What went wrong? How are we going to learn? And so standing here tonight, sitting here tonight, I can confidently look all of you in the eye and to the board and say, we are a better organization today than before the pandemic. And I am proud to be able to say that, and I'm proud to lead an organization that's made up of just incredible human beings and professionals. So thank you, and with that, we're going to move to board comments, and we're going to start with board member Kay Kinsler.
Good evening. First, I want to thank all the presenters for their comprehensive reports. But more importantly, I want to thank you, all of our partners in our education journey. It's the parents, the teachers, the support staff, whether it's the nursing team or instructional aides, maintenance, operations, transportation, nutrition services. You get the idea. It takes everybody working together to provide a world-class education to our students. And I'm proud to say that that happened all while living out our district's values during the pandemic, and we continue to live out those values. So thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. Fantastic to see everyone here and be here tonight celebrating our district. Also, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. My dad moved our family out here back in 1985 over here to Arcadia. Lots changed over the last 37 years. Some really cool stuff like air conditioning, which we didn't have back then. Of course, this beautiful Performing Arts Center, and a lot of other things too. But what hasn't changed is the absolute commitment to that world-class education like Dr. Vanasdall was talking about. That absolute commitment by the teachers, administration, all the staff, the families, and the community to providing the best education possible to all students. And that commitment is why our family moved here 37 years ago, why my wife and I chose to live here and raise our kids here, and why I'm so thankful and proud of all the successes and all the hard work put in every day by the folks that we heard from tonight, as well as all the ones behind the scenes that we didn't hear from. I'm glad we were able to celebrate all of your amazing accomplishments here tonight. Thank you for everything you do and have done this school year in the past and all the wonderful things that we will continue to do in the future. Thank you.
Board Member Yee.
Hi, everybody. So my thanks as well, and echoing my fellow board members for all of our administration, staff, teachers, nutrition, janitorial, everybody, for everything they've done during the last 2 years. As a new board member, starting off right when pretty much the pandemic hit, it was an interesting journey with Raymond too, being a new board member as well. But the one thing that I do want to, wanted to thank everybody for, and why I'm so passionate about this district is when I heard everybody talking today, it's the relationships that we all have with each other, the respect that everybody has no matter what, and like what Dr. Vanasdall said, we may disagree, actually we do disagree, but we're all respectful of each other's opinions, and at the end of the day, what binds us all together is that we're here to make sure that we do the best for our students. And so thank you again to everybody, our community, our families, our students, for the grace and space during these last few years, and I'm just really, really proud of where we've come, and I look forward to where we're going to be as we move forward. So thank you again.
Madam President, why don't you bring us home and then close out the presentation?
All right, well, you got to start with me and you get to finish with me. My family too came to this community so that my children could attend these schools and grow up with this amazing experience and foundation to fly when they leave. And I really do believe that that's the role of public education, to create good citizens who have choices and make an impact on their community. And I think we've heard from everyone tonight, not just the folks that work for AUSD, but the students and the parents, about how important it is to give back. And I hope that you've seen that this is a purpose-driven organization, that our priorities are in place, that our focus is clear, and that we do challenge and inspire not just students, but people to make a positive and profound impact on their world, whatever that world is. So thank you for your time and your listening this evening, and thank you to all who contributed. It's a lot of information, but I think it was really important to share the journey and the things that we learned and all the steps that we took to make sure that our students are centered and that their well-being is why we do what we do. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all who helped make this possible with cameras and recording. And we wish you well. Have a good evening. Thank you.